الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is our 7th session. Last session we covered the Hadith on Bid'ah in great detail, and we covered some portion of the Hadith Innal halal bayyin wa innal haram bayyin wa baynahuma umurun mushtabihatun. We covered a portion of this Hadith. Today we will continue from the part of the Hadith where Rasulullah uses a beautiful example to put the message across regarding the prohibition of Allah, regarding the limits of Allah. Hadith, like the shepherd who pastures around a sanctuary, all but grazing therein. Truly every king has a sanctuary, and truly Allah's sanctuary is his prohibitions. Commentary, the Prophet ﷺ gave a wonderful example in reference to a person indulging in doubtful matters. He meant when a person indulges in doubtful matters, then there is a fear of him eventually indulging in haram, just like a shepherd who is grazing the sheep of his king within the king's boundary. There is a fear that some of the sheep may end up in someone else's territory due to his carelessness and negligence that will result in him being punished by Allah Ta'ala. So Rasulullah ﷺ gave an example of a shepherd who is grazing the sheep of his king within the king's boundary, within the king's territory. Now this shepherd is obliged to herd the sheep within the territory of the king, and he should make sure that the sheep do not leave the territory, do not leave the boundary and end up in someone else's. So that is the responsibility of the shepherd. That is the king's command. So similarly, we are ordered to be within our limits, within the hudud of Allah, within the hudud set by Allah Ta'ala. Whatever Allah Ta'ala has told us to do, we do. Whatever He told us not to do, we shouldn't do. So this is the hudud of Allah. The moment we cross the hudud of Allah, we cross the limits set by Allah, we have entered the prohibition zone. So this is the meaning. So a servant refraining from doubtful matters is a sign of his commitment and dedication towards his deen. So he will do anything to keep himself within the limits set by Allah and not cross it under any circumstance. So the sign of a person's dedication and commitment towards his deen is his attitude of refraining from crossing the hudud of Allah, crossing the limits set by Allah Ta'ala. That is a sign of his true commitment towards his deen. So when a person refrains from doubtful matters, that tells you that this person is a very committed person. This person is a true believer. If he's able to refrain from doubtful matters, of course he will be refraining from haram matters. It'll be a lot easier for him to a person indulges in doubtful matters is a sign of his careless attitude towards his deen that will eventually indulge him into haram, which is crossing the limits set by Allah. So again, if a person indulges in doubtful matters, then most likely he will also indulge in haram matters. It will lead to haram. So this is the reason why it should be cut off from the root. You should refrain. A true believer is he who refrains from anything that leads to haram. Being cautious. This is what the Sharia is teaching us. There are numerous examples during the life of Rasulullah ﷺ in his practical actions and his fatwa, the answers. He will adopt cautiousness even when answering to certain questions. One such example is the narration of Adi bin Hatim radiallahu ta'ala, one of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He once said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam Ya Rasulullah, or the Messenger of Allah, I have a hunting dog and I dispatch my hunting dog for hunting. And when I see another dog with it, what shall I do? Now I send my hunting dog to hunt down the animal, and then I see another dog with my dog. What shall I do? Now the scenario is, what Allah Ta'ala has taught us in His holy book, that whenever you are allowed to keep a hunting dog. Yeah, he has to be well trained. You have to train the dog for the keeping to be permissible. Okay, so when you train a dog for hunting, it's permissible for you to keep the dog. So now when you dispatch the dog, you're meant to take the name of Allah. When you dispatch the dog, you're meant to take the name of Allah. And then when your dog hunts down the animal, if the animal is alive, you say you have to say Bismillah again. You have to take the name of Allah. And if the animal is dead, it's halal. So now, in his question, he sees another dog. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him to refrain from consuming from the meat. Why is that? Because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you have only read Bismillah on your dog and you have not read Bismillah on the other dog. That is being cautious. So there is a possibility that the other dog on which the name of Allah has not been taken participated in the hunting. And there is also a possibility that he didn't participate at all. He just stood there. But Rasulullah through his fatwa, through his verdict, he is teaching us that you should be cautious. Is to be on the safe side. There are numerous examples. That's just one example. Rasulullah said in another hadith, "Da ma yuribuka ila ma la yuribuka." Leave what puts you in doubt for what does not put you in doubt. So the conclusion is, whenever there is a matter which has the possibility of being halal or haram, nothing is clear, then you should adopt, then you should refrain from it. Then that matter becomes doubtful. You should refrain from it. Now you shouldn't go to the extreme. You shouldn't be having OCD. You know, sometimes what happens is people go to the extreme of being cautious. For example, you go to someone's house and you want to pray. You want to pray in the house. Now you're doubting: is the carpet clean? Is the floor clean? You know, this is unnecessary. Provided that there's nothing apparent, nothing visible, the floor looks clean, you pray namaz. Now you're doubting: should I pray there? Should I? This is OCD. This is not what's meant. This is called waswasa. You should refrain from waswasa. Similarly, you go to a place where there's no tap system. The time of namaz comes, but there is water in the bucket. Now you're doubting. The water looks clean. Apparently, it looks clean. It doesn't, it has the color of the water. It doesn't smell bad. You're doubting. Well, it may be impure. Then you refrain from doing wudu. No, you shouldn't go to that extreme. But we should keep a balance. We should refrain from waswasa. Next slide. Truly in the body there is a morsel of flesh, which if is healthy, the whole body will be healthy, and if he is diseased, the whole body will be diseased. Truly is the heart. So from the above, Rasulullah is indicating towards the importance of the heart in the body. The heart governs the entire body. The heart governs the entire body. The way, in a biological sense, a person is healthy when his heart is healthy. When a person's heart is ill, sick, the person is sick. When someone's heart is not functioning, the person will be dead. The body will be useless. So similarly, in a spiritual sense, if someone's heart is healthy, if someone's heart is filled with iman, is filled with all the good qualities, that will project in one's action. Heart is like a projector. Whatever is good in the heart, that will project in your outward action, in your physical action. That will manifest, that will display in your action. On the other hand, if your heart is filled with filth, if your heart is filled with doubt, if your heart is filled with disbelief, that will manifest in your action in the form of disobedience. So if there's something, if your heart is filled with iman and with good things, praiseworthy qualities, that will manifest in your action in the form of obedience. And if your heart is filled with filth, filled with doubt, filled with disbelief, that will manifest in one's action in the form of disobedience. This is the clarity. This is what Rasulullah meant. One of the other ways of making your heart project good deeds is consuming halal. If you nourish yourself with halal, then you have allowed your heart to project good. Your heart will become enlightened, and that in turn will be displayed in your actions. You'll be more obedient towards Allah Azza wa Jalla. Look at the verse in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الرسل كلوا من الطيبات وأعملوا صالحا. Or the messengers, eat from the good and do good deeds. So look at the connection. Straight after ordering to consume halal, Allah Ta'ala is saying to do good deeds, because there is a connection. If you eat halal, if you nourish yourself with halal, you'll automatically be able to do good deeds. There is a connection. So you eating halal is you doing a great favor to yourself. One is that you're fulfilling the command of Allah. The other is you are allowing your heart to project good. On the other hand, if you nourish yourself with haram, then you have made your heart filthy, you have made your heart dark, and that will display bad actions. This is the reason why we see nowadays families are not happy, children are not listening to their parents, the children are not listening to the fathers. It's because you have to, it boils down to the root. You have to see where his earning is coming from. If his earning is haram, then of course, his children are not going to listen to him. He's feeding himself haram, he's feeding his family haram. They will not obey him, they will disobey him. Him himself is disobeying Allah. Of course, his family members are also going to disobey him. So the position of the heart is like a king, and the position of the limbs is like the people who are under the king. So the heart governs the entire body. The reason why heart is called qalb in the Arabic language is because it keeps on changing. Allah Ta'ala is the one who controls our heart. He is the one that has the ability to change our hearts. This is the reason why Rasulullah would frequently make that dua, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik, as reported by Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha. The meaning is, O controller of the hearts, make my heart steadfast in your religion. So this is the dua all of us should make. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. And also the verse in Surah Al-Imran, Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmah innaka antal wahhab. So these are the duas that we should keep our tongues moist with. Next slide. Lessons from the Hadith. That which is halal is clear, and that which is haram is clear. So a servant should do what is lawful and abstain from that which is unlawful. Refrain from doubtful matters as it could eventually lead to haram, as stated by the Hadith. The heart is not just an essential organ of the body in a biological sense, but is also essential in a spiritual sense. The way the body is lifeless without a functioning heart, the same way a person with the evil heart is doomed because of the inability to do good. This is the reason why one should make a lot of effort on the heart by purifying and cleansing it from evil traits through the remembrance of Allah and through frequent repentance. So since the heart is the core of the body, is the is the organ, is the place that governs the body. We should train out, we should make a lot of effort on our hearts. This is what the Sahabas done. They made a lot of effort on the Iman. They filled their hearts with Iman and faith and conviction. And that in turn displayed in the actions. So we should clean our hearts through the remembrance of Allah and through frequent repentance, and also consuming halal, as stated. The buzurgs, the pious elders, they were the masters in this field. The scholars are not just called scholars because of the data, because of the information that they have in their memory. It is also, they are also masters in the field of spirituality. They have trained, so they are the masters of this faculty. How to cleanse one's heart, how to train one's heart. This is the reason why we go to the mashayikh, we go to the spiritual mentors. So they are the masters of this field. And they are the doctors of the heart. They are the doctors of spiritual illnesses. So this is the reason why we should also pledge allegiance to mashayikh, to knowledgeable and pious spiritual mentors. We will benefit greatly. And this was an old trend. Even the scholars in the past, they would pledge allegiance to big mashayikh. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to the next hadith? If anyone have any questions, please ask before we move on to the next hadith. Okay, we'll move on to the next hadith. Hadith on the rights of the neighbors and one's guest. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. رواه البخاري ومسلم. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, let him who believes in Allah and the last day speak good or keep silent, and let him who believes in Allah and the last day be kind to his neighbor, and let him who believes in Allah and the last day be kind to his guest. Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. So this is a very important hadith which covers many aspects on the rights, on the aspects of the tongue, on the rights of the people, on the rights of the neighbors, on the rights of the guest. Next slide. Hadith. Let him who believes in Allah and the last day speak good or keep silent. Commentary. The meaning of the Prophet ﷺ statement, let him who believes in Allah till the end, means the one who believes in Allah the way he should be believed in, then he is required to do what Allah Ta'ala has ordered him to do and refrain from that Allah Ta'ala has told him to refrain from. And speaking good and remaining silent is from his command. So adopting the quality, the trait of speaking good or remaining silent when there is nothing good to speak of is a command of Allah. Command of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the command of Allah. Ta'atullah, ta'atu Rasuli. Man ata'ani faqad ata Allah, man asani faqad asa Allah. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever obeys me obeys Allah, whoever disobeys me disobeys Allah. So obeying Allah, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is obeying Allah azza wa jalla. Disobeying Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is disobeying Allah azza wa jalla. The most important of all the commands of Allah is controlling one's limb from committing evil, from committing mischief. Because our limbs will be questioned on the day of judgment. It will be held accountable on the day of judgment. As indicated by the verses of the Quran. Among them is the verse, Inna as-sam'a wal basara wal fu'ada kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. Surah Isra 30, verse 36. The translation of the verse is, surely the ear, the eye and the heart, each of them shall be interrogated about, will be questioned. In another verse, Allah Ta'ala says, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Not a word does a person utter without having a vigilant observer ready to write it down. So these are the verses which indicate that on the day of judgment our limbs will be held accountable, and controlling the tongue is the most difficult, because our tongue is very lucid. A lot comes out, a lot of wrong comes out, a lot of sinful, a lot of impermissible things comes out, and it will be questioned on the day of judgment. Now there is a question that every single thing we utter, would it be written down? Whether it be permissible or impermissible. The impermissible is understandable. Of course, it's going to be written down. If we say something sinful, then of course it's going to be written down. What about if we say something, we utter something which is permissible, not sinful? Would that also be written down? According to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu and others, anything that is permissible, if you utter something permissible, you say something that is permissible, that will not be written down. Only those utterance will be written down which are sinful, basically. If you utter anything for which you if you utter anything for which there is reward, that will be written down. If you utter anything for which there is punishment, that will be written down. Anything that is permissible, that will not be written down. That is according to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu and others. There's many emphasis regarding controlling one's tongue in the hadith, from the hadith of Rasul, from the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The famous hadith in Bukhari, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man yadmanu li ma bayna lihyayhi wa ma bayna rijlayhi azmanu lahu al-jannah." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever can guarantee what is between his two jawbones and what is between his two legs, I guarantee paradise for that person. Whoever can control his tongue, in other words, whoever can controlling his tongue and his private part from mischief, from evil, I guarantee paradise. So the harder the action, the greater the reward. Because this is an extremely hard action, very hard to cling on to. The reward is very great. That Rasulullah guarantees that person paradise. It's a Sahih Hadith. That person is surely to enter Jannah. In another hadith, Rasulullah said, "Inna al-abd la yatakallamu bil kalima min ridwanillahi la yulqi laha balan yarfa'u Allahu biha darajat wa inna al-abd la yatakallamu bil kalima min sakhatillahi la yulqi laha balan yahwi biha fi jahannam." It's a hadith in Bukhari. The Prophet ﷺ said, a slave may utter a word which pleases Allah without giving it much importance, and because of that Allah will raise his status in the hereafter. A slave may utter a word which displeases Allah without thinking of his gravity, and because of that he will be thrown into the hellfire. So we should be very careful over what we say. Sometimes we'll say something good, and without and we do not even realize, but on the day of, that will be highlighted on the day of judgment. That will be brought front of our eyes. That will rescue us in the hereafter. So many things we must have said. These things will be presented on the day of judgment. On the other hand, so many bad things we might have said without even realizing on the day of judgment, that will be brought front of us. So may Allah save us from the mischief of the tongue. May Allah give us complete control over our tongue. Well, there is another narration from Muaz bin Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that he said to Rasulullah, are we going to be held accountable for everything we say? So Rasulullah said to him that, O Muaz, are the people tossed into the fire upon their faces or upon their noses except because of what their tongue have uttered? Meaning majority of the people who will be entering into Jahannam, it will be because of their tongue. This is what Rasulullah is indicating to us. So may Allah give us tawfiq to have control of our tongues. Next slide. The Prophet ﷺ stated, one should speak good or remain silent. Speaking good means that speech for which there is reward, like giving a good advice or calling people towards the path of Allah. Remaining silent means if someone doesn't have anything good to say, then he should remain silent and should avoid speaking, even if what he may utter be permissible. Otherwise, there are two consequences. So if a person thinks that he's not going to be able to, he doesn't have anything good to say, then he should remain silent. Otherwise, what will happen is he will be facing two consequences. One is that most of the time when a person starts a conversation, it starts off good, but eventually it leads to riba, it leads to, dispute, cussing, etc. So it leads to sin most of the time. So when a person he fears that my speech will lead to haram, impermissible speech, then he should refrain. He should refrain from starting the conversation in the first place. The second is that even if he doesn't lead to haram, if he doesn't lead to riba, he's just talking about permissible things, then he will come under wasting his time in futile and unnecessary acts, talking excessively, unnecessarily, even though it's permissible, but he is wasting his time. So there'll be two consequences, and both of them are severe, and obviously the former is more severe than the latter. Imam Shafi Rahmatullah gave us advice. Imam Shafi Rahmatullah said, when a person intends to speak, then he should ponder before speaking. If he knows that he will be able to speak of something good, then he should speak. And if he is doubting, then he shouldn't speak till he is convinced that he is able to speak of something good. Imam Shatibi Rahmatullah, in his book Muwafaqat, talking about wasting times and indulging in futile acts, he's saying that though it is permissible, but he is not free from criticism, is not free from being disparaged. Playing, wasting time, all these activities, even though they are not impermissible, it is still criticized, it's still disparaged. Provided obviously there are no evidence of it being haram, there are no indications from the nusus that is haram. If it's permissible, it's still criticized. It's something that the scholars don't like, they're not happy with. They deem it as makruh. The scholars deem it as makruh because this is the wasting time. By wasting time, a person is not benefiting worldly wise, not in the hereafter. He's not benefiting in any way. If a person is benefiting in terms of if a person is benefiting in a worldly sense, then that is valid. Person is earning money, he's working, he's trading. These are all valid. This is fine. But a person just sitting down and talking and wasting time, he's not benefiting neither in this world nor in the hereafter. That's why the scholars, they deem it as being undesirable. Next slide. Hadith. And let him who believes in Allah and the last day be kind to his neighbor. Commentary. In the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is emphasizing the importance of being kind and helpful to one's neighbors. Allah Ta'ala emphasizes the importance of fulfilling the rights of the neighbors in his holy book. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنبِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. Translation: worship Allah alone and associate none with him, and be kind to parents, relatives, orphans, the poor, the near and distant neighbors. Till the end. So Allah Azza wa Jalla in this verse is ordering the people to fulfill the rights of people of different categories, and he also mentioned the neighbors. Prophet ﷺ said, Jibreel kept advising me about treating the neighbors kindly, so much so that I thought He would order me to make them as my peers. Sahih al-Bukhari. So much emphasis has been laid in giving, in treating the neighbors with kindness. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that Jibreel salam kept on telling me, advising me about my neighbors, about treating them nicely. So much so that I thought that they're going to inherit from me. He went to that extent. Now we need to know what type of rights do neighbors have over one another, which we will be touching upon. No one should give difficulty to one another in general, whether it be verbal, physical, or in any other way. So none of that should happen between neighbors. You shouldn't be causing them any inconvenience, any difficulty. A person should feel safe from his neighbor over his wealth and his family's dignity. Very important. So you should be, neighbors, they should feel safe from each other in terms of one's wealth, family, and one's dignity and family's dignity. Meaning, if you were to go abroad, there's no fear of your neighbor breaking into your house and, you know, stealing from you. There's no fear. Similarly, if you're abroad and you leave your wife behind, you know, there is no one to cheat you. So you need to, this is very important, that the neighbors, they feel safe from one another over these things. It should be that sense of trust should be there. So where else you're going to achieve trust if you do not even have it in your, you know, in your residence? The maskan, in the Hadith, Rasulullah named the house as maskan, place of peace. The peace will not be there if you do not have good neighbors. That's why it's very important to have good neighbors. Being kind and polite to one another in general, not being harsh, not being rude. When you meet them, greet them and ask them about their welfare. When you see your neighbors, you know, you should give them salam, you know, ask them about their welfare. The Muslims, you say, Assalamu alaikum. Non-Muslims, how are you? How's your day? What are you up to? You ask all this, it makes people feel comfortable. These small words, they carry a lot of weight. Even by asking them about their welfare, they will feel good. They might have had a bad day, but by you asking them how they feel, that will make them happy. That will be a sense of relief for them. You know, even showing a smile, even smiling at them, that makes a great difference. These are the teachings of Rasulullah. Helping one another in need, whether it be financially or by word of mouth. If they need help, you trust them, you know, you give them money, you help them out. If you don't have money, then explain to them that, you know, I'm so sorry, I wish I could help you, but unfortunately I don't have money to give you, you know, I don't have enough to give you, you know. So you make them feel comfortable. Just reassure them that, you know, once I get money, you know, in the future, you know, tell me in advance, then I can arrange money for you. So financially or by word of mouth, even that is sadaqah. Visiting them when they are sick, obviously when they are ill, go and see them wherever, whether in their houses or in the hospital, you should go and see them. Whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim, you should go and visit them. Attending the funeral prayer, obviously that is only specific with the Muslims. If your neighbor is a Muslim, you should go and attend the funeral prayer, and if it's a non-Muslim, then you shouldn't attend the funeral prayer. So these are some of the rights of the neighbors over one another. Next slide. Hadith. And let him who believes in Allah and the last day be kind to his guest. Another message in the Hadith is the importance of treating one's guest with respect and kindness. The rights of the guest over the host is very great, and the Sharia has emphasized that matter and has put measures to ensure that guests are not mistreated. The guests have lots of that. The rights of the guest over the host is very great. Allah Ta'ala in the Quran, He mentioned the story of Ibrahim as-salatu was-salam, how he treated his guest. هل أتاك حديث ضيف إبراهيم المكرمين إذ دخلوا عليه فقالوا سلاما قال سلام قوم منكرون فراغ إلى أهله فجاء بعجل سمين فقربه إليهم فقال لا تأكلون. Verse 24 to 27 in Surah Zariyat. Allah Ta'ala is saying, remember when they entered his presence and greeted him with peace, he replied, peace be upon you. Then he said to himself, they are unfamiliar people. They are unfamiliar people. Then he went to his family and came with a fat roasted calf. So he presented it before them. He said, would you not eat? So just from this story, we can learn so much about hospitality and how to treat the guests. That Ibrahim alayhi salam, he welcomed them, he gave them salam, then he hurriedly, discreetly went and prepared food for them. He slaughtered a live animal and he roasted the meat and he brought it in front of them. So you can see that he didn't delay in giving them food. Straight away they sat, and even talk. He didn't even talk to them. He didn't waste no time. He straight away went to the kitchen and he prepared the food. And it was the best of the food that he offered. I'm sure Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't have roasted calf every day. That was not his daily meal. He specially prepared for these guests. And obviously the story is, the story of, they were sent to destroy the 𝐥𝐻𝐻. And then it was revealed to him that they were angels. But from his part, till then, you can see how much he done from his side as a host. So we can learn so much from this story. Next slide. Etiquettes of entertaining a guest. To receive them with a warm welcome. You give them salam, warm welcome. We can learn this from the hadith of Rasulullah, because there is a hadith in Bukhari when it's mentioned that Rasulullah, he welcomed one of the delegations that came to him, the Wafd Abdul Qais. So Rasulullah said, Marhaban bil Wafd alladhina ja'u ghayra khazaya wala nadama. So he welcomed them. You should welcome your guest. Give them a warm welcome. To provide them with a comfortable seating, okay? To make extra effort in preparing food for the guests. Obviously, you have to go out of your way when it comes to preparing food. You make extra food. You make extra effort. Get your family people involved. Everyone should get together, helping out in the kitchen. To make arrangements for the guests to wash their hands. This is your responsibility. You shouldn't give them food straight away. Hygiene comes first. You should make arrangement for washing their hands. Either, empty the kitchen, the guests go and wash their hands, or sometimes a bowl is brought. To offer food to the guests as soon as they arrive and not delay in giving them food. As Ibrahim alayhi salam has done. His guests came, he straight away went and he prepared their food. You shouldn't delay. They shouldn't be sitting there, looking at each other and there's no food there. Food should be there straight away. Whichever time guests come, food should be there. If they come lunchtime, food should be ready. If they come tea time, everything should be ready. Why do they have to wait? That is a big part of hospitality, entertaining a guest. Hatim al-Asam rahmatullah, a very great buzurg, he said, hastiness is from shaitan except in 5 things. Hastiness is from shaitan except in 5 things. Meaning these 5 things, hastiness is encouraged, is a sunnah, not from shaitan. He said, it'amud daif, feeding the guest. You should haste in feeding the guest. This is sunnah. Watajhizul mayyit, when a person passes away, you arrange the person's funeral straight away. You shouldn't delay in that. Watazwijul bikr, and marrying a young girl, meaning when she reaches the age of marriage, you should marry her off. You shouldn't delay. وَقَضَاءُ الدَّيْنِ, and fulfilling one's debt. And lastly, وَالتَّوْبَةُ مِنَ الذَّنْبِ, when you commit a sin, you should straight away do tawbah. Such a beautiful saying of Hatim al-Asam. Is from the hadith, but the way he has mentioned it is very effective. إطعام الضيف وتجهيز الميت وتزويج البكر وقضاء الدين والتوبة من الذنب. Now, we should we should give a lot of importance to the way we serve food, who to serve first. So obviously from the sunnah, you serve food to the oldest person first, then from the right side onwards. Now if you have people who have similar age, then you start from the right. Simple as that. To follow a sequence when serving food according to the custom of the people, like serving starters first, then main course, and then desserts. The sequence of serving differs depending on the different communities. This is a very good etiquette in entertaining one's guests that is very appealing, satiating, and a form of honoring them. So every culture, they have their own way of serving food, so you should cling on to that basically. And we can also learn this from the Quran as well. Like in Surah Waqi'ah, Allah Ta'ala mentions وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِمَّا تَخَيَّرُونَ وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ. Allah Ta'ala is talking about the people of Jannah, those will be entering into paradise, the ni'mah that they will be blessed with. They will be served any fruits they choose and the meat of birds they desire. So look at the order. Allah Ta'ala mentioned the fruits, the consuming of fruits first, then the bird meat. So you can see the order: fruits, then meat. So this sequence. We can also learn from the Quran, and you can also adopt the way of the Quran as well. You can serve fruits first, and then you can serve the main dishes. Second slide. To serve all the food items at once and not at different timings. So try to, whichever meal it is, you do everything at once. What will happen is basically, when you're going to be serving at different times, then what will happen is the guests will, they will finish eating by the time the next dish comes, and that will go to waste. You have put so much effort in the food, you made so many dishes, and now your guests don't eat it. How does it feel? The whole point of preparing so much food was for your guests. So bring it all at once and not at different times. Otherwise, by the time you get the next one, people will finish eating because they don't know that another dish will arrive. The food items should not be taken away while the guests are still eating. If the dishes are taken away too early, then the guests will finish eating quickly out of shyness and remain hungry. Once everyone finishes eating, only then should the removal and cleaning take place. So that's another thing. Up until the guests don't finish eating, don't remove anything. That's going to put them off. The host should sit with the guest to eat, otherwise the guest will feel shy to eat, and the host should remain seated with the guest till the end. That's another thing. So this is in the scenario where you have only invited one guest. So if you have invited one guest, then it's quite awkward for a person to eat on his own. So in such a scenario, the host should also sit with the guest and eat with him, all the way till the end. So if you eat and you finish quickly, that will also put him off. So you should remain seated with the person. And if there are lots of guests, then that is fine. Then normally the host will be serving. So bearing all these little things in mind, which make up a very good a very good way of a very good atmosphere. The host is greatly encouraged to accommodate for the guests up to 3 days when they intend to stay, and after that it will be optional for him to accommodate for them. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that diyafa is for 3 days and jaiza, and everything after that will be optional. So when a guest intends to stay up to 3 days, you serve him is sunnah, a greatly emphasized sunnah, and after that it will be optional if you want to keep him or not keep him. If you keep him, if you accommodate them, you'll be rewarded. If not, then nothing will happen. After they leave, is also sunnah to give them some money as well, for at least one day. That will keep them going for another one day. So 3 days hospitality, and then you give them money for another, that suffices them for one day, which is known as 𝐥𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐿. The guest should not leave the house of the host except with his permission. So when it comes to leaving, you should take their permission. You shouldn't walk off like this. You know, you should say, you know, we're leaving now, etc., etc. You shouldn't leave straight away. Just seek their permission. It is a preferable action to walk the guests up to the door when they intend to leave, as that is a form of honoring them. So also you should walk them up to the door when they're leaving. Now we learn the rights of the guest over the host. Now what should a guest do from his side? Very few points I will touch upon. So Imam Abu al-Layth al-Samarqandi, a great Hanafi scholar, he said the guest should bear in mind 4 things. He should sit where normally people sit. Now, you know, the sofa, you're sitting on the floor. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be disrespecting the host. You go into the house, you sit on the sofa. You sit where normally people sit. Secondly, you should be happy with whatever they give you, whatever they provide you with, whatever food they give you, you should be happy with it. You shouldn't be complaining and making faces. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't insult them in that way. Thirdly, you shouldn't be leaving the house without their permission. When you go to a guest house, you shouldn't be leaving without their permission. You know, tell them that you're leaving. Fourthly, you should make dua for them. You should make dua for your host. When they feed you, you should make dua for them as well, as it is taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the dua for the people who fed him. Allahumma barik lahum fima razaqtahum waghfir lahum warhamhum. He made that dua. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us the dua, Allahumma at'im man at'amani wasqi man saqana. So these are the duas that we can learn from the books from the dua books, and we read them. Yeah, we always make these duas, you know, when our wives cook for us, when we go to a guest house, we make these dua for them. Final slide. Lessons from the Hadith. Control one's tongue from evil and mischief, and everything that leads the tongue to mischief should be avoided in the form of adopting silence. Fulfilling the rights of the neighbors and guests, forfeiting their rights is a great evil, regarding which there are many warnings from the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Forfeiting their rights is neglecting the command of Allah, and those who are negligent with the commands of Allah are severely punished. May Allah save us from his punishments. Amen. May Allah give us tawfiq to act upon whatever that has been said, whatever that has been discussed. If anyone has any questions on today's session, you can ask. Is there any slide that anyone didn't understand? Anything that was ambiguous that needs to be clarified? If you do, then please ask. So doesn't matter how rude the guests are, you should still be nice to them. You play your part. From your side, you should be nice to your guests. Okay? So if they are, one advice I can give, if the guests are very close to you, they're your own relative, then you can speak to them. You understand? You can speak to them about, you know, certain things happen, you know, to make the situation better. And if you think that will cause fitna, problem by discussing it, then don't. You should avoid fitna. You play your part. If they are not being respectful, they're being insulting, then you should do sabr. That is that's the best way to go about it. The second question, what to do if the host is sick and cannot attend the guest? Should the guest still? Then obviously inviting da'wah, when a person invites you, you should accept the da'wah. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whenever a person invites you, you should accept, because the person inviting you is him giving you respect. He thought about you. You understand? So when you are fine, you should go. If you are sick, you should mention it to them. That, I am sick, you should first thank them for the invitation, and then, mention your excuse that you are sick, you are unable to come, and they will, they will understand. Sometimes what you could do is, if you cannot go, send some of your family members. So in that way, they are not disheartened. You understand? So sometimes, for example, if it's a wedding invitation, for example, and you're very sick, you can't go, then you can send your family members. In that way, the situation is, in that way, there will be no problems, and the person will not be disheartened. The person will say, at least he sent his family members. So this is one technique. So we'll leave it till here, inshallah. If you have any further questions, ask on the WhatsApp group, inshallah. I'll answer all of them, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.